we can't do this alone. That's the one thing that I know for sure. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Broke Girl Society podcast. I'm your host, Christina. Thank you so much for listening in. So today's episode, I thought I would share a little bit more about my story, my journey of addiction and recovery. So for me, it started in around 2007, 2008, when casinos were introduced in Oklahoma. They started kind of popping up, I think maybe a little bit earlier in the 2000s, but there was one built about 2005-ish in my town. And it started out as like this thing where I would go for girls' nights, just nights out, date nights. So when I first started gambling, it was very rarely and only on special occasions. I remember going to Vegas a couple of times before that and showed no interest in gambling. It was not appealing. Everything stunk. The smell of smoke just wasn't doing it for me. So I found myself starting to go a little bit more frequently in 2008 after a divorce. I was single. I didn't have kids. All my friends were getting married. They were having babies, and I was struggling to relate to a lot of them for those reasons. And so it felt like a safe place. And in hindsight, I always kind of chuckle at that, thinking that it was a safe place because it ended up causing me so much harm later on down the road. But there's security. I wasn't somebody that was for the bars. I was in my late 20s. It just felt like I could go up there, hang out for a little bit, and just enjoy an evening and then come home. And it was like that for a few years, where it was just on occasion, and it was just a way to kind of get out of the house. And I thought in a way that, hey, I earned some me time and some entertainment time, and that's how I spent it. And then as life kind of went on for me and life got lifey, I found myself in an abusive relationship, and I had never experienced anything like that. So I didn't really know how to navigate it. I didn't know how to get out of it. And my gambling seemed to be a way to escape that for a little while.
The brain does begin to change as one gambles longer and longer, or for longer periods of time. That the prefrontal cortex, a very important part of the brain, with logic, reason, consequential thinking, literally just shuts down. And the only thing operating is the middle of the brain, called the limbic system, where it's like having a gas pedal with no brakes.
It was just a progressive downfall of choices and decisions. And my family were getting really concerned. I was borrowing money. I was causing financial harm, and I just wasn't ready to accept that gambling was at the core of it. I just thought it was everything else. As my health deteriorated, I thought losing weight would fix the problem. And when I lost weight, that didn't really fix the problem. And, I just kept looking at everything else besides the gambling because I didn't want to let the gambling go. It was the only way I could cope with everything else.
The level of depression, we have the highest suicide attempt rate of any of the addictive disorders. And that's just very scary all the time, that normal people start thinking there's no way out of their problem.
It was 2018 was probably the worst year for my gambling. My behaviors were out of control. I was put on medication for depression, but I wasn't talking to my doctors about the gambling. Because still, you have to remember, my mindset at the time was I was the one that couldn't do it right. Like, it was a me problem, not that gambling could be addictive or harmful. And so I wasn't telling anybody that. And there was also a lot of fear there that if I did say that gambling was causing me harm, that people would try and talk me into quitting, and I wasn't ready. And so, 2008 was one of the worst years for that, and it just progressively got worse. And finally, it was 2021. I was watching a show late one night after a binge, and it was early 2021. It might have been late 2020, and I'd had a terrible night at the casino, and I was watching a show that talked about food addiction. And when this woman was talking about her food addiction, she was talking about the anticipation of the meal, and then she talked about how she felt eating the meal, and then she talked about the self-hate and the loathing she felt after she ate the meal. And we're not talking like a hamburger and fries, we're talking 6 hamburgers and 6 fries. But when she was talking about her experience, something just clicked with me, because I felt the same emotions. Like, I felt how she felt before I could get to the casino. And then while I was at the casino, I felt how she was describing. And then when I was leaving the casino, that self-hatred, self-loathing, like, why am I so sick? Why can I not quit? Why can I not be a normal person? And she was describing all that through her own struggles. And I really connected with it for the first time. Like, I've got an addiction. I've got a problem. And so I tried to just stop, like cold turkey stop. And I think, as most of us know who've traveled the road of addiction, that cold turkey or abstinence is never going to be the way that works. And I was able to maintain that for just around 60 days. And right at 60 days, I slipped, relapsed, cracked, whatever. And I went on a week-long binge at the casino. And everything I had saved up, everything that I had accomplished in those 60 days went out the window, plus some. I had won some of the most money that I had won in my gambling history in that week. And I played every penny of it back, and then some. And I think that was really the first time that I experienced thoughts of self-harm, thoughts of like, I don't want to be here anymore. I even had started to kind of plan how I would do it. And that scared me more than anything. And I remember the last night that I placed a bet, I was really just considering, not being here anymore. And I didn't understand, why I couldn't change, why I couldn't stop. And I remember picking up my phone, and I was seeing a picture of my mom and my sisters on my phone from my sister's wedding. And I was like, I can't do this to them. I got to figure this out. They have loved me all through my bad choices, through my addiction. I've got to do this. If I can't do it for me, I got to do it for them. And so that next morning, I just went to my mom and I said, look, she had been gambling with me over the years, but she had actually stopped because she recognized the harm it was causing her. And I had told her I had stopped too, but I hadn't. And so I came clean to her, and we said, we're going to figure this out. We're going to form a plan. And that's what we did. And I started getting on the internet, looking for help groups, looking for, some type of plan on how do you get yourself help? How do you get yourself out of this?
Christina's fairly independent from a young age. She had her mindset on the way things should be, but loving kids, never in any trouble or anything like that. Just, did their normal kid stuff. So, and I'm a single mom, so they were
pretty independent early on.
Yeah.
We did it right from when Oklahoma approved it.
Yeah.
So I think for them it was kind of like her group of friends. It was just something to do and kind of kill time. It's just something new and different.
Yeah, the novelty of
it. Yeah.
Yeah, she was trying to escape, and I thought it would be just temporary.
Well, and she hid it pretty well from us. We knew she was going somewhere, but she would come over to my place, stay for like 10 minutes, and then go on. And I didn't know she was going to the casino, but then I'd talk to Mom and be like, oh, well, Christina's not home yet, so, you know, I was busy living my life. I knew she was going somewhere. I didn't necessarily know that it was the casino or that she had a problem with it.
Yeah, we were living together. So I had a clue that she was going, but I didn't really realize it was a problem at all until probably 2018.
We were trying to be really mindful of not putting her in a situation where she didn't feel like she had support or an out.
Yeah.
And so, but we also knew we
could no longer
help her or support her decisions for going to the casino. Every time at that point I was talking to her, she needed something. And it was like she only contacted me because she needed something. She needed money for this, or she needed money. And I had already set that boundary for her. And then I had figured out through talking with my mom that Mom had not set that boundary with her.
No.
And that's when I started realizing, oh, there's a problem there. But there was nothing out there for guidance. We didn't know how to help her.
Right. And then when she came to me and admitted that she had a gambling problem, instead of telling me some elaborate story about how she lost this money or how she needed money or whatever, she actually admitted it. I knew, and she had a plan to help herself.
Yeah, I'm Wiley Harwell, the Executive Director of Oklahoma Association on Problem Gambling and Gaming. There are many services we provide. We have a contract with the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services to provide advocacy, training, some treatment for problem gambling, public awareness for problem gambling, and prevention. Believe it or not, every little piece of awareness that happens makes an impact. You know, it will help someone, or they just know more about it. They're more accepting of this being a problem. And that's why stories like Christina of a recovering person are so important, that you can hear the impact. So personal stories make that much more real. This is what happened to me and how I got in trouble.
You know, there wasn't a lot on there, but my mom had known somebody that had gone to GA previously, and she had mentioned that to me. And I remember kind of like seeing the signs occasionally at the casino. So I called the GA hotline, and it wasn't the best experience at all. It's not like I was expecting them to roll out the red carpet for me, but like, yay, she finally admitted it. But it was more of I just felt like I wanted to talk to somebody who cared, and instead I got a bored college kid, I think, and they were just like, yep, somebody will text you soon. And I don't know, it was very deflating, and I'm not sure what I expected, but I didn't expect that. But somebody did text me later on that night and gave me a list of local meetings. I made a point to make sure that I visited the meeting, which was, I think, like 4 days from then. And in the meantime, I searched social media and tried to find other ways to connect to better understand what was going on with me. I was so scared to go into that GA meeting, and I went up to the door, and the door was locked. And I thought, oh no, like I'm at the wrong place. I don't know what's going on. And it almost sent me back to my car. Like, this was a sign, I'm not supposed to be here. But I saw somebody kind of going around the building and into another door. And so I decided, you know what, I'm here. I drove 35 minutes to be here. I'm going to see if this door will take me to where I need to go. And it did. And I'm so glad I went to that meeting. Even though there were no other women in that meeting, it was all men. I still felt for the first time, you know, like I'm connecting on a level. Like I'm not alone in this. There is help. And so I stayed with that meeting for a year of my recovery, and I went every Saturday morning to that meeting. I continued to follow up with therapy. I started looking for other resources, podcasting one of them. Started listening to other podcasts that were really, really helpful to hear all these stories of people who'd struggled just like I had. But what I wasn't finding were women. in this space. I wasn't finding women talking about this. I mean, there was an occasional woman's story, but it wasn't in the capacity that I was looking for. And I just wanted to know that there were other women struggling, and maybe somehow we could connect. And I was able to connect with a podcaster who had struggled with gambling, and I was on her podcast like 60 days into my recovery, I think. And we became great friends. And then I thought, you know what? I'll do it. I'll podcast about gambling specific. Her podcast wasn't gambling specific, but she had experienced harm through her gambling. And so I thought, well, I'm going to dedicate one to women who are struggling with gambling. And that's what I did.
I was in a pretty desperate state when I came into what I call my recovery now. I don't know if I use the term gambling addiction or problem gambling. I don't know. I searched for something and came across a number of support pages. And I asked to join Christina's group, the Broke Girl Society. That day, I learned that not only was it a support group on Facebook, but that Christina had a number of recorded podcasts available. I spent a lot of that first little bit, maybe 2 weeks, daily listening to the podcast, and also joined in on the Zoom meetings that are hosted through the Broke Girl Society as a part of my journey as well.
From there, I created a support group online, and now it's almost 3 years since I placed that bet. And I am supporting women every day, helping them find recovery and better understand what's going on with them.
I think that having a group of women who can support you through those tough times is important. I'm incredibly grateful, and there are some amazing women who choose to share their recovery through the Broke Girl Society. I'm glad that for me, that was my story. But I don't want to take away from any person who identifies as a male. There are support groups available for men as well. And anybody can listen to Christina's podcast. I'll plug that as well.
My buddy Rob, One Day at a Time, you can find him on TikTok. He is really targeting, he's 24, so he's really connecting with that age group and a little bit younger, and he's sharing his own story, and he's helping so many people in that age group.
I think that given the fact that I'm a 25-year-old white guy, my main audience is probably people who are between the ages of 18 and 30 who are into sports betting, that maybe went to college at a school where the majority of their friend group were placing sports bets. But realistically, I just want to reach anyone with a gambling problem. That's just kind of the demographic that I have been reaching. So I've been seeking to create content with people like Christina Cook, who runs the Broke Girl Society podcast, and try to expand my reach, because this message is the same regardless of who you are, what you look like, what your background is. Everyone who gambles is at risk of developing a gambling problem, and the steps to recovery are the same across the board.
Yeah, so in this community, in the gambling harm community, there's like I said, a handful of podcasters that talk exclusively about gambling harm and gambling recovery, and a lot of them help people aside from the podcast. It's a free resource for everybody. I don't know of anybody who charges for their podcasts.
I didn't want to charge my audience for anything. I don't want people who are going through the worst financial crisis of their lives to then have to pay for a course on how to quit gambling or a subscription to watch my videos. So everything I put out to them is 100% free.
I think it's really beautiful that people allow themselves to be vulnerable, to share the message that there's hope, that there's help available.
All the ways that people have reached out to me, or even just to let me know that putting out this podcast and hearing all of our stories gives them hope. That's a one of the, it's so hard for me to put in words what that means, but it means so much that everything that I went through over my 15-year journey with gambling addiction amounted to something rather than loss and harm and hurt and pain and all these things that I can sum up that addiction.
To me, it feels kind of cyclical in nature, that there was somebody who endured this path of recovery and then chose to share it with another, and then that person then can pass on the message as well, that I don't have to live in despair today. And that's what I'm really grateful for.
I'm so proud of her and what she's achieved. I heard her speak this week at a conference, and yeah, she's great. Yeah.
You know, my biggest project in this gambling harm community is just making sure that women are heard and seen and accepted, and yeah, just kind of breaking that stigma and making sure that women know they're worthy of the help that's out there and the hope that there is help out there.
No one likes feeling like they're alone or like they're the only people that understands or is going through something. Nobody does.
Right.
And the truth is, nobody is. There's somebody somewhere going through the exact same thing you are.
Right.
It's one of the hardest disorders to stop once it's started. And so it's compassion for these people that you want them to have a better life and to find, a sense of recovery, to see what it does to their lives individually, but what it does to their families as well. All the way down to children not having what they need because of gambling problems. So, I think just the interest in the stories, the interest in the people that develop this problem, is enough to keep me going,
There's all these resources and tools that people can find and utilize to build a recovery that works for them. Because at the end of the day, we're all trying to build a life that we don't need to escape from. And that's working on the internal issues, because gambling is an issue or a symptom of internal issues. And that's the way I look at it, is my gambling or any other addictive behavior is based off internal issues that I needed to work on. And so, encouraging people to find therapy, get into communities with other people who are working a program, whatever that looks like, whether that's step work or just having somebody to talk to every week or check in. Those are all ways that we can help each other out, help each other overcome the harm. All right, thanks so much for listening in today. You got to stop the bleeding, start the healing. I appreciate everybody who supports this podcast and the work that we all do in the community, and hope to see you soon.